So I am a huge fan of both Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra. It is genuinely one of my favorite franchises of all time, and I cannot wait to see what Avatar Studios cooks up for us in the next few years. And while I adore both shows, I definitely don't think either of them is perfect, and I have my own criticisms for each series. But one criticism that I see pop up time and time again, I feel, is just supremely unfounded. Every few months, somebody tweets about how The Legend of Korra made Aang a terrible father, and how it's the worst thing the show could have done to that character. Some even go so far as to say that he is an abusive father, calling it character assassination. And to that, I have to say, have words lost all meaning? Have we lost all sense of nuance in our media literacy? Are we that afraid to let our heroes have shortcomings? So today, I'm going to explain why Aang is not a terrible father, but a flawed one, and break down exactly how the character's history and role in the world perfectly explains his shortcomings. And hey, if you like this video, I have a handful of much older videos about the Avatar franchise as well. I particularly like the one I did about Korra, and as the series expands with Avatar Studios and the upcoming Netflix show, I will definitely be covering the franchise more and more. I actually have some pretty big plans. So if you're interested, please feel free to subscribe and stay tuned. But first, I want to thank today's video sponsor, Keeps. So I know I haven't shown my face in videos for a while, but you all remember that I have long, voluptuous hair, right? Did you also know that 2 of every 3 guys will experience hair loss by the time they're 35? That stat kinda scares me. But thanks to Keeps, we have nothing to worry about. Keeps offers clinically proven, research-backed treatments to stop hair loss and improve hair growth. With Keeps, you can get expert care without ever even visiting the doctor or pharmacy, all thanks to its doctor-recommended plans that are delivered straight to your door at around half the cost of the traditional pharmacy. Plus, their network of medical advisors and specialists are available 24/7 to help if you need it. Whether you want to prevent hair loss, stimulate more hair growth, or just take better care of the hair on your head, Keeps has you covered. Personally, I'm going to try out their natural thickening shampoo and conditioner system because I think my hair could use it. Hair loss stops with Keeps. To get 50% off your first order, go to keeps.com/Johnny2Cellos or click the link in the description. That's keeps.com/Johnny2Cellos. So the argument that Aang was a terrible father stems from the Season 2 Legend of Korra episodes Civil Wars Parts 1 and 2. While on vacation at the Southern Air Temple, Tenzin's daughter Ikki gets lost, and he and his siblings Kaya and Bumi form a search party to find her. And while searching, a lot of baggage from their childhood is dragged up. While Tenzin has mostly positive memories of his father, he misremembers certain aspects of his childhood, particularly about vacations he thought their entire family had taken.
Bumi and I weren't on those great vacations. It was always just you and Dad.
So it's made very clear that Aang put more time in with Tenzin due to their shared airbending abilities and their role in the future of the Air Nation, which we'll touch on much more thoroughly later in the video. Next, Kaya and Bumi point out that Aang had so much responsibility as the Avatar and the head of the Air Nation that he didn't have as much time for his kids, a tendency that they feel Tenzin shares with their father. Now, I want to say very clearly that I am in no way justifying Aang's flaws or shortcomings as a father. He absolutely made mistakes, but I think with the limited information we have about his role in Bumi, Kaya, and Tenzin's lives, and with the context in which we learn that information, that claiming Aang was a terrible or abusive father is a serious stretch. It's made very clear that Kaya and Bumi, while having frustrations with Aang as a father, also recognized his duties and role in the world. And this episode is not about Aang, it's about these siblings' relationship to one another, and the trio coming to a better understanding of each other and about their differences in their childhoods. For that reason, we aren't getting a full picture of their lives or childhoods. We're getting limited anecdotes framed around these specific differences and issues that arose from them. We aren't seeing Aang as a father, we're being told stories specifically about some of his shortcomings as they pertained to the conflicts at hand. The idea that this information is giving us a full picture of Aang as a father is simply bad media literacy. Yes, Aang had flaws as a father, flaws that affected his children, Everyone has flaws and insecurities based on their own lives and upbringings. What we don't know is how Aang responded to or made up for these shortcomings over the course of his life and his relationship with his kids. The point of this episode was that Kaya and Bumi wanted Tenzin to understand their perspective on parts of their childhood a little bit better, to better understand some of Aang's shortcomings so that Tenzin could avoid making some of those same mistakes. That was the conflict. That's why Aang's shortcomings were the subject of the conversation. That doesn't mean that Kaya and Bumi don't have any good experiences with their father or that he was a terrible dad. It is still very clear that Kaya and Bumi love and respect their father.
Hope I made you proud.
Of course he'd be proud of you, Bumi.
While they do have frustrations, nothing indicates that they see him as a terrible or, God forbid, abusive father. In a franchise where we have pretty explicit examples of abusive parents, it is really wild to me that anyone could make this claim about Aang of all people. In fact, the one other example we do have about Aang's relationship with his kids comes from the Legend of Korra graphic novel Turf Wars. In it, Korra asks Kaya how Aang reacted when she came out to him as gay, and she outright says that he was nothing but supportive. Does that sound like a terrible or abusive father? There are so many aspects to these characters' lives and relationships, and the episodes and conversations in question are but a small glimpse into their worlds. But I think this also begs a question about the way we view characters in such a black and white way. Why are people so afraid to let their heroes have flaws? Why is Aang a character who shouldn't have shortcomings that he has to work through and overcome? Why can't we accept that good characters aren't perfect people? Especially because, based on Aang's societal roles and the nature of his own upbringing, it absolutely makes sense that he would have these specific shortcomings. Like, it couldn't make more sense. And when I see arguments that it doesn't make sense, I really question how much people pay attention to the nuances of these characters and the world surrounding them. Let's take a look at Aang's life and history from before The Last Airbender began through to his death. Aang was obviously a member of the Air Nation before the tragic genocide committed by the Fire Nation. The Air Nation is a communal society made up of monks, a society that had nothing that resembled a nuclear family. Yes, Aang had a close relationship with elder monks like Gyatso, but Aang does not have a traditional mother and father figure. He didn't have any experience in a traditional family unit like the one he would eventually find himself in during his life with Katara. That isn't to say that Aang couldn't have known how to be a loving father. It's absolutely in his nature to care for and nurture people. But it is to say that he is also from a society in which everyone takes part in caring for one another. It is fully communal, where other community members are able to pick up slack when others are busy or have responsibilities that take up their time. I think it's pretty reasonable to expect that Aang might struggle to fill the role of a traditional paternal figure, given that he didn't have one himself. And on top of this, I think people are really underestimating the societal pressures Aang would take on between the events of The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra. Not just as the Avatar, but even more prominently the pressure of restoring the Air Nation. It can't really be understated how significantly the world began to change after the events of The Last Airbender. We're talking about the back end of the 100-Year War. That is 100 years during which the Fire Nation imposed its will, doing immeasurable damage and completely reshaping the four nations. I don't think it's underselling it to say that Aang had one of the tallest orders of any Avatar ever in terms of rebalancing the world. Obviously, he had Zuko's help as he took over Fire Lord duties, but they had 100 years of global damage to undo or to help readjust society in response to. The comics even explore how the pair of them struggled to agree on what to do with the long-standing Fire Nation colonies in the Earth Kingdom. And obviously, a huge part of that major readjusting and rebalancing was the founding of Republic City, which formed in those aforementioned Fire Nation colonies. This was one of the biggest reshapings of the four nations in history, and it was led by both Avatar Aang and Fire Lord Zuko. It is literally the spiritual duty of the Avatar to maintain balance in the world. It is their role in the world, and the post-100-Year War four nations likely required more attention than nearly any era prior. But what was likely even more personal pressure for Aang was the weight of the entire Air Nation on his shoulders. I think fans really brush past the trauma endured by Aang when his literal entire culture was murdered by the Fire Nation. And on top of that trauma, the continuation of that culture now sits on Aang's shoulders. It's his responsibility to continue the ways of the air nomads and make sure their way of life isn't lost to time. And Aang was the literal last airbender until Tenzin showed his first signs of airbending capability. It completely baffles me that people don't see how that pressure of literally an entire culture's continuation wouldn't give Aang some tunnel vision in regards to his relationship with Tenzin. And again, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but with the traumas and fears and insecurities instilled in Aang from his entire life, his entire history, do people really not understand how he might be prone to favoring Tenzin while focusing on the continuation of the Air Nation? With his duties as the Avatar in one of the most tumultuous times in Four Nation history, and with the pressures of reforging a lost culture, does it not make sense that Aang would struggle to be the most perfect and present father possible? But I also think that with what we know of Aang as a character, it's kind of wild to assume that he was an absolutely awful parent. His flaws and shortcomings are completely in line with what we know of him as a character, but we have never seen his life or interactions with his kids. We don't know exactly what their lives or relationships were like, and to simply assume that he was terrible or abusive because of Kaya and Bumi's frustrations it's a take. To call it character assassination is embarrassing. Luckily, we're about to get an entirely new era of Avatar content thanks to the formation of Avatar Studios, including a movie surrounding the Aang gang as young adults. I've even heard rumors that after the film, we may get a series continuation set after the events that will be depicted on the big screen. Though obviously these are just rumors, so take them with a grain of salt. But with the upcoming expansion of the Avatarverse, likely set to explore countless different time periods from characters old and new, there are some huge opportunities for us to learn more about Aang, Katara, Bumi, Kaya, and Tenzin from other periods of their lives. It is entirely plausible that we'll get to see Aang's relationship with his kids firsthand. We could see exactly what Aang's dynamic was like with his children. We could see exactly what things had to keep Aang away from his family and exactly how that affected him. We'll get to see the weight and pressures of being the Avatar and the last Airbender as an adult and how they affected his family. We'll be able to see how Katara felt about Aang trying to balance his life as a father and as the Avatar. And seeing those things play out could provide the nuance that I think a lot of people crave or aren't willing to imagine with the limited info we currently have available. And if you think that the nature of those relationships is going to be nothing but neglect or abuse, well, I don't know what to tell you. That simply isn't going to be the case. Aang is nuanced. Aang has shortcomings, but Aang isn't terrible. And Bumi, Kaya, and Tenzin know that.
That is one good-looking family, huh?
That's one happy family.
Folks, thanks so much for checking out this Avatar video. I am beyond excited for the future of this franchise. If you didn't see yet, Avatar Studios has chosen Flying Bark Studios to animate the film. They handled the animation in shows like Lego Monkey Kid and Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which both have incredible action animation. Absolutely top-notch stuff. There are so many reasons to be excited. You should absolutely expect more Avatar content from me in the future. I have some very big plans. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.
Johnny!
To